left side of this, sort of standpoint is focusing most on the observable behavior reports, and the right side more emphasis on subjective quality or experience. And this is the huge divide in the consciousness study at the moment. All right, and then I'll talk briefly about this mono-report paradigm. Before starting it, I want to ask you guys which of the next 4 positions describe your opinion about the usage of reports in consciousness research. To understand neural-based conscious experience, do you think the behavior reports from subjects are really essential and always necessary? That's the first position. Second position is the reports are not always necessary and they may be actually harmful in understanding conscious experience. The third one is I'm not really interested in the consciousness. And the 4 is a completely different opinion. Who thinks one? Yes?
What's the reports?
Just verbal reports or manual reports, anything.
So in what sense
Yes.
it might be harmful?
If it's not unclear, then maybe just say 1 or 4. Harmful in like asking report, maybe just misleading in understanding. No. EEG is a measurement.
So it's logically possible that the reports are not always necessary, but not so much harm.
That's then 4. All right. So what's your position? Number 1, reports are very necessary. Okay. 1, 2. And then 2.
Wait, is it always or very?
Always. This is always. 2. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Okay, number 3. Oh, that's good. That's really promising. Number 4. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. All right, most people seems like 2 or 4. Okay, let's see how it changes or doesn't change. So here is the sort of global view of current debate. Conscious states tend to be really associated with prefrontal parietal areas and the global interconnectivity. So that's not super controversial. Anything that is highly conscious, that's fine. But this one, conscious people who thinks that there is conscious experience without attention or without report, does it actually qualify as conscious state? Like Dehaene, should we consider it as pre-conscious? That's the thing. As long as we don't see prefrontal parietal areas. One debate was recently brought up by this group by Aru. So they are this NCC approach has been criticized. Previously, people presented the same stimulus, like this motion-induced blindness, and they asked the subject to say either yes, I see that yellow, or not. Yes, no, yes, no. And then coming back to this neuronal activity, trying to find the neural correlates of consciousness that correlates with the stimulus. That has been going on 25 years. Now they think that maybe there are something before and after that is related, but not directly, causing this, phenomenology. One is that, NCC called NCC pre, and another one is NCC co for consequence. Maybe something that follows conscious experience. Maybe something that precedes consciousness, but not directly consciousness itself. So let's see what kind of things are potentially like that. Yes.
By conscious experience, do you mean qualia?
So yes, qualia of a particular thing, like narrow sense qualia.
So like consciousness of
yes,
this thing?
Exactly.
Okay.
So preceding or following, is there something like that? So then this is one example that Stan Dehaene gave in the paper, and I also featured. This is presenting some very faint sound like right, and then you sometimes hear it, sometimes you don't. And then separating these trials where subjects actually reported seeing, hearing, and not. You see this area of the activity is different like this. But if you pay attention to it, you see that even before the stimulus presentation, there is some kind of difference. And it could be related to sort of willingness to hear or expectation to hear or something like that. And in the case of fMRI, it's really slow. So we are really sure that this is nothing to do with the experience itself, but the things becomes more complicated when you start to record neuronal activity. Then, imagine doing this kind of experiment in EEG or, neural recording. You start to find, here hard versus non-hard, neural response difference around, let's say, 50 milliseconds after onset of the stimulus. Is it reflecting expectation or preparedness or hearing itself? Based on the, theory of the prefrontal area or, parietal area or reportability, activation at that level of 50 milliseconds is too early. So it could be, NCC pre. Okay. And then what about NCC consequence?
Sorry, so
Yes.
this is pre the kind of the attention? Yeah, really.
That's one possibility. Attention is one possibility. Okay. So then now leaving aside of this topic at the moment, now we momentarily think about functions of conscious phenomenology, because this is related. So one popular way of thinking about functions of consciousness, if you are coming from evolutionary biology, you have to think about there's always functions or usefulness in consciousness, as Nicholas was saying, right? And the most popular idea is a flexible access and selective use of incoming information, which is really a lot, and then retained for a long period in working memory in a flexible manner. And then that's really useful for better and longer term planning. And that seems in general really true for conscious processing. And this overall thing seems to suggest that attention, working memory, and access or report is a very critical functions of consciousness. And this leads to this idea of the global workspace theory by Stan Dehaene and colleagues. This has a roots in a sort of cognitive revolution kind of idea. And also, Barthes' idea of global workspace. The critical thing is that the perceptual input or motor output has to converge to some kind of common area of the blackboard-like thing. And then when they are shared by many different kind of module, then that defines the contents of consciousness. That is filtered by attention, that is retained in the working memory, that is reportable through different modality, and that is very flexibly used. That's the idea of the functions of consciousness and the phenomenology. Okay.
So in
Yes.
sense, this global workspace is related to the
Prefrontal and parietal. Yes. Especially in the layer 2-3 neurons that communicates between these areas. But then the question arises whether attention, for example, in the case of attention, consciousness and attention, is it the same? And as I alluded to, I've been working on this topic for 10 years or more, but there has been lots of evidence for attention without consciousness that I don't go. And but more contentious issue is consciousness without attention and dissociable effects of attention and consciousness. And this now very famous motion-induced blindness, as I mentioned, people have found that attending to the side actually causes disappearance more. So this seems to suggest that attention and consciousness cannot be the same thing. And there are a whole lots of experiments to go, but I'll just skip it. Now I also want to talk about this working memory and consciousness. This is a really relatively recent discovery, so maybe not so many people are familiar. This paradigm first shows this grating to the subject very briefly, and then mask it. And then after 5 seconds of delay, you ask the subject to tell whether this test grating, which is presented for a long time, is tilted clockwise or counterclockwise to the invisible cue. Okay, this is a really weird task. And if you ask the subject about this cue, about visibility or whether which orientation it was, subjects are completely out of chance. So this itself is not visible, but if you are asked to compare with this invisible one with this test, you can be above chance. And this has been very reliable and even extended in a very weird kind of experiment where you show some target which is invisible because of the mask, and then one of the 12 locations in the display, and so your detection performance is at chance. However, if you ask the subject to rotate mentally 120 degrees, either this way or that way, or for the invisible stimulus, and then compare to that rotated invisible stimulus, whether this stimulus is up or down, they can again do it above chance. And this is really weird, but nobody until this David Soto actually asked the subject to use the information about the invisible stimulus before over 500 milliseconds, 5 seconds. So this has never been discovered. And in terms of fMRI activation, they found that activation in prefrontal cortex has been seems to be engaged during this delay period for this one. Okay. And as I said in the first lecture, there has been lots of study on the unconsciousness, and we now know that addition of the numbers, or subtraction, or reading, and also getting some kind of meaning of the sentence. These kind of things seems to be happening at the level of non-conscious, at least partially. Okay. So functions of conscious phenomenology. Attention-wise, I strongly doubt that that is the really function of the phenomenology. And so working memory is also unclear whether we can actually, we always need phenomenology. And the detection of abnormality and the other things are also shown to be possible without consciousness. Again, always all these kind of cognitive functions are diminished when things becomes invisible, but still possible. And the remaining thing is this access or report. It seems like anything that you experience is always reportable or accessible. So this seems to be the one of the remaining core functions of the conscious phenomenology. And in fact, this neural correlates of consciousness project is highly dependent on the report, right? Like because you present the same stimulus and sort the trials according to subject's report, this is highly dependent on the report. And then, in fact, if you continue to do this neural correlates for consciousness research, you tend to find highly strong activation in the parietal and also prefrontal areas. And in fact, some of the philosophers say that consciousness cannot be separated from functions. And we always need a report.
You mean the report to others, or like lock-in syndrome, like feel?
Yeah, report to others as a sort of final goal. But the locked-in syndrome-wise, you can actually try to report, and then whether you can, whether the experiment try to read that out or not, that's the kind of question. But I basically agree with you. Like locked-in syndrome, or some people who cannot report, or can be actually decoded. But their point is that no, it is the access to the conscious experience that is more important, not the report itself. Okay, so which one is more close to the truth? That's the question. About the phenomenon called binocular rivalry, which is sort of similar to motion-induced blindness. You see the same thing on the display, but conscious phenomenon changes over the time. This one, we know that you can't stop changing by just attention training or efforts. It is highly automatic and also vivid. And you don't actually need to report, or you can just passive reviewing casually and then see it fluctuate over the time. So and also experimenters knew that under the optimal conditions, eye movements, just monitoring eye movements, can decode what you're actually seeing, highly correlated. And so, in fact, some of the particular, stimuli that mana is also replicating. If you present a grating or a green grating which moves to the left side, and the right eye, a red grating moving to the right, your eye tries to follow it on the perceived stimulus that is now inside of consciousness. So you show two things at the same time, but you don't see both at the same time. It's kind of fluctuating in very complicated dynamics, but most of the time you are seeing this or that dominantly. Okay. And then if you look at the eye movement speed, and then correlate with the subject's reports here. Like, I'm seeing to the right, left, right, left, right, left, right. Corresponding to that, percept reports, eye movements actually fluctuate like this. And then according to Mana's preliminary, analysis, we can also decode roughly like 90% of the accuracy of the subject's report just based on the eye movements. And then, yes. So that's the question, actually. Here, subject does not try to actively report, but eye movement just reflects it. And then,
but
yes.
there seems to be a small delay between the peak of
Yes,
the
yes, yes, yes.
How do
So this is a speed, right? And maybe acceleration-wise, maybe that's one thing. And also at the transition of the phenomenology, it's really unclear which one you are actually seeing. So maybe the delay may be reflecting that thing. It's not 100% correlation. Yes.
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't have a reference with me right now, but I read a study where experienced meditators report actually being able to choose what they see in binocular rivalry, or even hold both images together, if that's their subjective report. I wonder how that contradicts or...
I think you are talking about the study on the motion-induced blindness. And then in the Tibetan monk, they claim that they see the yellow dots all the time, or disappearing all the time by their intention. For this, binocular rivalry, it's supposed to be happening between the much lower level, and here it seems like it's very difficult to hold the perception on one, but not the other. All you can control is the frequency of the change. That's something really easy to change. Like if you try to speed up, you speed up relatively quickly. If you slow down, you can slow down. But you can't choose one over the long time.